I've spent the last months of my life 3D printing literally thousands of these boxes and building a completely new organizational system to organize everything in my workshop. And if you stick around to the end, I'll show you a super cool trick that this system can do that I've never seen anywhere else before. This video includes an ad for Squarespace. This is my organizer cart. I built this thing 5 years ago. It consists of 18 drawers, each one filled to the brim with 3D printed boxes that I use to organize all of my different nuts, bolts, washers, you name it. Now it turns out I quite quickly outgrew this thing. I had a lot more stuff than I realized. So soon after, I built this entire assortment case tower for these assortment cases. These are all my own design, 3D printed parts and some woodworking, and I use these to organize, well, more of my stuff. Around this time, the system also evolved from just boxes in drawers to these things, which now have a grid system in the bottom with a matching grid in the bottom of the cases, which makes sure that nothing moves around even if the case or the drawer isn't completely filled. And over time, I kept adding more and more boxes and variations of boxes and different organizers to the system to the point where I've now covered every single available drawer in my workshop with boxes like these. But I'm still faced with the problem that I just keep collecting more and more stuff that I don't have anywhere to put. Like, I'm at the point now where I've just got bins full of boxes already in 3D printed containers with a variation of different items that I don't have anywhere to put. So today, we're changing that. We're gonna build something that is gonna cover all of my organizational needs forever. Well, forever is a long time, but for the foreseeable future. And I can tell you right now, from what I've got planned, I think I might have gone a little bit overboard with this one. So here's the plan. Instead of just building more of the organizer cart that I've already built, I wanted to come up with a system that is more modular and more expandable. So we're gonna build a cart consisting of a frame with 12 drawers. Each one of the drawers will be slightly larger than in my previous one, so we'll go from a 6x6 grid to a 7x8 grid. And instead of 2 rows of drawers in the same frame like the first one had, this one is made in such a way that you can stack multiples of them next to each other to expand the system as large as you want it. Oh, and I made this whole system where this whole unit can be built in a variation of 3 different heights, so you can build it to whichever size fits your needs. There's also 2 different size drawers and a system to where you can mix and match those across the different sizes, but we'll get to that. So 5 of these cards all along the wall here are gonna take quite a lot of material. And this is, well, most of that material that is gonna make those cards. First things first, let's cut some parts for the drawers. And this is quite quickly gonna become one of the most tedious projects I've done in a while. Because 5 of these cards, each card has up to 12 drawers. Each drawer consists of a bottom, 4 side pieces and a separate front. That means that we'll have to cut 6 parts for each drawer. For 12 drawers, that's 72 parts. And for 5 frames of 12 drawers each, that's 360 parts just for the drawers. And that's not even taking into account the actual frames themselves and assembling the whole thing. So, let's start cutting. Hey, real quick, I've been thinking about something. For the last 5 years that I've been printing these boxes and variations of these boxes, I've just been calling them organizer boxes or assortment boxes, assortment system, you name it. But I think it's time that we finally give this system a name. So I've decided to call it ModuBox for modular boxes. The ModuBoxes are based on a 55mm grid and are available in a range of different sizes and even some variations that you'll see later in this video. Also, all my previous projects are compatible with these boxes. That's the work table, assortment cases, all organizers, everything. So, ModuBox for all your organizational needs. Oh yeah, and I hope you like the name because it was either modular boxes or assortment boxes, and one of them didn't have the best abbreviation. And while I do all of this repetitive cutting, let's keep track of what it actually costs to build one of these units. A full sheet of 1/2" MDF is $45, which is gonna be more than enough to make all the drawer sides for a full 12-inch unit. Another $30 for a sheet of 1/4" plywood for the drawer bottoms, and we've got all the material we need for all 12 drawers with some to spare. That means that if you want to build multiple of these, the price per unit goes down by quite a bit. But we'll touch on that at the end. And this is it. This is what's going to turn into 60 drawers. And honestly, I'm a little bit underwhelmed. I thought it would be more. But hey, the by far biggest amount of work is still ahead of us, turning all of these into actual drawers. So we better get started. Oh, and by the way, I got a little bit excited and cut too many parts. So there's like enough for almost 70 drawers in here. And that'll be enough boxes for now. And I have a little bit of a confession to make. I accidentally cut too many of the parts for the drawers. And by the time I realized I was already in such a routine that I figured, why just not make a few more? So I've actually made enough drawers for not 5, but 6 of the full cabinets with drawers inside. Which I've now come to realize also means that I have to make another frame. But we'll get to that. So it actually didn't take me long to realize that just gluing these together by hand, trying to hold them in place and shooting them with a nail gun was a bit tedious. So I ended up making one of these super simple jig for gluing everything together. This thing worked great for like 80% of this, but then I guess I had too much time to think about how to improve this while I was gluing these together. So I ended up spending maybe a bit too much time 3D printing what will become essentially the same exact thing. I must have gone through like 10 different iterations of this to essentially end up with this thing. It's essentially just a set of springy corner brackets that hold the pieces in place in the right position and completely square, so it's super nice and easy to glue and shoot everything together with brand nails. Now, whether or not it's worth it for you to spend this much plastic and time printing out all of this just to make your life a little bit easier, I'll leave that up to you. But regardless, the files for all of this will be included with the download. All right, now that we have 67 boxes in 2 different heights, it's finally time to start building the frames that all of these are gonna sit in. Let's talk drawer heights and different combinations of those drawer heights. Most of the frames I'll build will just consist of 12 small drawers. But now that we have an extra frame and some tall drawers, we have some options. The way I've designed the system is that any 3 small drawers can be replaced with 2 larger ones, so that you can have 12 small, 8 large, or any variation of those in between. And that works across all 3 heights of the frames, because each height difference is 3 drawers taller or shorter. And of course, there's plans available for all the different sizes and drawer combinations. So let's talk about the drawers for this. It's not the drawers, it's the frames for the drawers. We're gonna make a pretty simple frame out of MDF. All of these parts will neatly fit on a single sheet of 19mm MDF. Cutting these out, just like with all the other parts here, is essentially just an exercise in turning one large square into smaller and smaller squares. Rectangles. And to keep track of our expenses, the full sheet of 3/4 inch MDF is another $49. Now, I'm sure a lot of you might not like the idea that I'm building all of this just out of MDF, but I actually really like this material. It's both really affordable, easy to cut, easy to work with, but most importantly, it's super stable. And it's actually what I've built most of the stuff in here out of, including this work table. Because for large frames like this, with a ton of drawers that need a specific distance to work properly, it's really important that the sides don't end up bowing, which in a lot of cases, plywood tends to do over time. So I'm sticking to MDF, but you guys obviously build it out of whatever you want. I'd love to see some pictures of different variations of these. Now, I got all my pieces cut, and you might think that the next step is to go and assemble all of them, but I'm gonna do one thing first that's gonna save me for a ton of hassle and time later on. And that is installing the drawer runners right now. And when it comes to marking out the layout for where you wanna place the drawers, there's one really important thing I wanna talk to you about, and that is introduced errors. What does that mean? Well, each one of these drawers is roughly 90mm apart from each other. So what I could do is mark 90mm from the edge, then mark another 90mm from that mark that I just made. Repeat that process, and keep doing so all the way down the line. Now, in doing that, there's a pretty high chance that somewhere along the line, I would introduce some errors. By only being half a millimeter off each time I make a drawer for 12 of these marks, by the end, that's enough that the drawers won't fit anymore. So instead, what I recommend you do is to keep the same reference and make all the marks based on that first edge. And to make that job super easy for you, I've of course made drawings with the dimensions for where to make a mark based on that front edge. That way we have the same reference and each mark is only off by however much that exact mark is off. Did that make sense? And there's of course drawings for all the different variations of tall and shallow drawers, different heights, combinations, you name it, it's all there. So using the plans, mark up all the locations for the drawer runners. You can use a self-centering drill bit and one of the drawer slides to help you drill all the holes in the right locations. Talking about the drawer runners, you can find tons of these on Amazon, and regardless of the brand, even the ones I bought here locally are pretty much all the same, even with all the same hole locations. 5 complete sets are $36, which again makes it a lot more cost effective to build multiples of these frames. That's a jig. It's 3D printed. It's gonna make your life easier. 3D printed jig that gives you all the hole locations for the drawer runners. Luckily, all the brands seem to have the same hole spacing, so just line it up with the marks you just made at the right height. I'm using one of these self-centering drill bits. And boom! Perfectly positioned drawer runners, holes, super easy. And by the way, this thing is printed on a standard size 3D printer in 2 parts, so you don't need any big fancy printers to print these. That goes for all the templates that you're gonna see in this entire video. I'll add a set of casters to the bottoms of all of these, so let's add that cost in. And to be fair, let's add in a little bit for wood screws and glue as well. The main cabinet is done, the drawer frames are done, so the last thing we need are some drawer fronts. And instead of just willy-nilly cutting all of these out, I've actually laid out the complete layout of all the drawers on the sheets so I can label them all, cut them out, and then once I reassemble everything, all the wood grain will match. I think there's a pretty good chance that all of this is complete overkill because there's barely any wood grain in these. Also, there's gonna be a huge handle in the middle of all of these surfaces, so no one's ever gonna notice the wood grain matching. But hey, overkill's underrated, right? Now I'm using 1/2-inch birch plywood for my drawer fronts. And luckily, you can buy these in quarter sizes, which is just enough for a 12 drawer unit. You can even buy a 4x4 foot sheet if you want to build 2, or a full size sheet will give you enough for 4 complete units. And that's 67 drawer fronts cut and ready for some holes for the handles. The handles that we're gonna use for these are pretty cool. They're gonna be 3D printed and they're essentially the next iteration of the handles that I've already used for a bunch of these cabinets in here. This is what they look like, and we need to cut a hole in here for these to fit inside of. And I'm pretty excited about these. I think this is gonna look really good. They also have another special trick up their sleeve, which is a space for a label, which is also gonna be 3D printed. But let's first cut the holes for them before I show you how that works. Now there's gonna be a bunch of different ways that you can cut the holes for these handles. For one, I've designed these in such a way that the hole you cut doesn't need to be extremely precise, which leaves us with a few different options. Regardless, the first step is gonna be using this thing, which is a 3D printed template, goes on the edge, does 2 things, allows me to use a pencil and mark the outline for where the handle hole is gonna be. And using one of these self-centering drill bits, I can drill into the center of each one of the end radiuses to make drilling in the right location a lot easier. So option 1, you can use a 40mm Forstner bit and drill into each one of these holes and then connect those 2 segments with the jigsaw, just following nicely along the line that you just marked with the pencil. That will give you a hole for this to perfectly fit into. Alternatively, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use a slightly smaller Forstner bit, still drill those same holes, still use the jigsaw, but just roughly cut it out, and then use a second template, which screws onto the back. Remember that, really important to screw it onto the back, otherwise you'll be left with screw holes in your front. Then I'm gonna use the router to perfectly router out this shape. Oh, and for the larger drawers, obviously also a template for the larger marking and a larger template for the larger router guide thing. Other than that, exactly the same. Man, this project has a lot of 3D printed guides and templates. And I'm doing this just to make your life a lot easier. So remember, alch.shop in case you want to build one. The 40mm Forstner bit, or for you Americans out there, 1 inch and 9/16, can be found on Amazon for $10. And since you can cut out the holes with a jigsaw and a bit of patience, I've chosen to not include the router bit in this. Nor are any of the bigger tools like drills and saws included in any of these calculations either. That's all the fronts, they're all cut. I've cut all the holes in all of them. All the edges have a nice chamfer, they're sanded, and all the fronts are oiled with a nice protective layer of white pigmented oil. By the way, when it comes to getting a nice finish on all of these fronts, there's one really good trick. Now the real trick to getting a really nice oil finish is to have an awesome girlfriend that helps you out. So with the fronts ready, with all the drawers ready, it's time to assemble them. And for that, you guessed it, again, some 3D printed jigs. This time, super simple, 2 alignment jigs, so that I can take a front, slide it in the space here, and then the drawer slides in and keeps the gap all the way around perfectly aligned. A little bit of just regular wood glue, and align everything and pin it in place. This thing, by the way, is a 23 gauge pin nailer, which is also what I've used to assemble all of these drawers. I think this is really good for thin MDF drawers because it doesn't split the wood. This one is battery powered, but if you have an air system, you can get super inexpensive ones that work just as well. And just like that, we've got our first drawer front installed on our first drawer. Now the only thing that's left to do on these is install the drawer runners. They'll just go one on either side, align to the front, that's it. And that's the woodworking part of this drawer process done completely. Unless I mess something up and I have to redo all of them. Only problem is that there's 67 of these drawers and 66 of them are left. But first, a quick ad for today's sponsor, Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is a huge part of the reason why I'm able to do what I do. Because in case you want to download any of the things that you've seen in this video, the plans, the files, the guides, you name it, all those can be downloaded from my website. A website which I created using Squarespace. And I actually started using Squarespace to build my own website long before they started sponsoring my video. And so can you. Start building your own completely personalized website from the ground up using their new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. Choose from professionally curated layouts and styling options to build your unique online presence from the ground up. Tailored to your brand or business and optimized for every device. Now, my website, I say everything from the build plans of, for instance, this organizer cart to 3D files for, well, the same organizer cart. But whether you want to sell physical or digital products, Squarespace has the merchandising features to make your products look their best online. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for growing your brand and building your business online. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/ALCH for 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. It's gonna take a while. Whoa. And that was the last one. But before we could put these into their frames and install the handles, we need to get rid of all of this stuff, and it will be like the third time I'm rearranging all of this in like a couple of weeks. Oh, it's so nice to just have everything on wheels all the time. If you have a workshop or a garage or anywhere where you make things or build items like this, you should always put everything on wheels. It's amazing. Oh, heavy. And before I started cleaning, I decided to paint all the cabinet frames black to match the walls. But because I think it's not strictly necessary, I've chosen to not include it in the total build cost. The same thing goes for the finishing oil I use for the drawer fronts. I'm starting to think this might be a little bit overkill. It's gonna be a lot of drawers. Talking about drawers, let's install them. There's an actual chance that I did this right. So far the gaps are lining up, and fingers crossed that the rest as well. You can't see yet, but the drawers all went in perfectly. They all line up. the gap is more or less even. This is the first time I've tried to install them. I've held off until now. You won't believe how much of a relief that is. Because I just blindly assembled all the fronts onto all the drawers without testing it, just hoping that I'd figured everything right. And it works! I don't know what happened. This one doesn't have drawer runners on it. Come on. Here we go. Last one. That simply looks incredible. Look at all the drawers. There's so many of them. There's one crucial piece missing. These don't really make for great handles. But you know what does make grand handles? 3D printing makes grand handles. I printed handles for each one of the drawers, obviously, in a range of different colors. But there's a method to the madness. Let's just start. And the way we'll attach them is just using some construction adhesive and then just sticking them in there. I mean, come on, doesn't that just look really good? I'm super happy with the color combination of all the handles, and even with the different amount of drawers in some of these units, it all still lines up and looks just, I couldn't be happier. But they're all empty, so let's fill them up. But that's gonna take a lot of 3D printed boxes, isn't it? And with that, a lot of 3D printing filament. So of course, I reached out to my friends at Bambu Lab to see if they could help me out with that. I asked them for some filament, they asked me how much, I pretty much just said yes. This isn't a sponsored video, they're not paying me money for this, but they did send me an insane amount of filament. Do you want to see how much filament they sent me?
Oh wow.
You ready to print some boxes?
This is a lot.
Yes.
Where is it gonna go?
Into the printers?
Yeah, but before that, where does it go?
Bedroom?
No. Absolutely not.
Okay then. So this is where the real work started. I've been doing a lot of printing. And by a lot of printing, I mean a lot of printing. All done with Bambu Lab machines and filament. Good thing I've done some printing. And by some, I mean a lot of printing. I'm not sure if that was worth it. Yeah, there's a lot of boxes. So I'll give you all the details about how much filament, how much print time, how many parts and everything at the end of the video. But I can tell you right now, all this is already well over 1,000 boxes and I think close to 70 kilos of PLA already. But I guess I have to clean up all of this now before we can start organizing. Still worth it, I think. Okay, that only took the better part of an hour to clean up, but we're ready to start filling them into the drawers. The only problem is that there's no base grids in any of these. So these will just slide all over the place. I printed some. The drawers will fit 7 by 8 boxes, so there's 2 different sizes. 2 of each will make up a drawer, and the whole stack of these will make up 1 cart. And so began the incredibly tedious process of sorting through hundreds, if not thousands, of individual small parts. But what's the actual material cost for all these 3D printed boxes? Because here's the crazy part, the 3D printed boxes alone for just one of these units consumed 17.5 kilograms of PLA. And filament prices can vary a lot. I'll base the price on the exact filament I'm using, which at bulk sale prices comes out to about $11 per spool or kilogram. That's $193 for just the boxes, another $8 for handles, and another $15 for the base grids. And now that we're done organizing, it was finally time to 3D print some labels with integrated text on them. All these labels will all nicely snap into place into the feature on top of the handle. And by the way, these can be printed on any printer. Even though it's 2 colors, you can just add a pause once it's done with the label part, switch out to the contrasting color and have it write the text after. As a finishing touch, I added a thin sheet of wood to the top. So now everything is organized. Oh, and yeah, for the nuts and bolts drawer, which is this entire section, I might have gone a little bit overboard because all the drawers and all the boxes in the drawers are color coordinated with the handles and the colors of the boxes. And I now finally have enough space for all of my nuts and bolts, and for some of the sizes like M6 and up, I've actually divided them into 2 separate drawers to get plenty of space, not only for what I have right now, but also different sizes that I might purchase in the future. Now everything is organized and that's well and good, but what if you want to print a box that's, let's say, 2x4, but you only have a printer like this mini, for instance, where this box doesn't fit on the bed? Well, I've got a solution for you. I've come up with a system that allows you to print much larger boxes than what your printer normally would be capable of. And doing that in 2 separate pieces that are then attached together. So this is essentially just a box split in 2 with some features on the side, and in their center and into these holes on the center, we can put a little bit of filament, snip that off. Those little bits then slide into the other piece, and everything is connected on the sides with another piece of filament that locks these 2 parts together. Snip it off, repeat the same process on the other side, and without any glue, you've got a pretty sturdy box. So now the largest box on a mini is a 3x5, and on X or one of the A series printers is a 4x7, which by the way is the same length as the drawer, so you can print boxes the full length. And in case the 5x6 box that you can print in one piece on the H2S isn't big enough for you, you can print a 5x11 box. I don't think you should, but the fats are included. But what about the elephant in the room? Hold on. Some of these drawers are taller, so the smaller boxes don't really utilize the space so well. And for a long time, I wasn't really sure what to do about this because I felt like just printing taller boxes will make for really tall and weird boxes. But then I tried, and it does make for really tall and weird boxes in a way. Especially this 1x1 size. But then once you start making them a little bit bigger, the size becomes more and more useful. And once you get up to sizes like this, I think they're actually pretty useful. So I printed a whole bunch of them. Don't worry, I didn't go as overboard, not nearly as overboard as with the other sizes, but I did print a variation of different sizes to sort of fill the needs that I have for the ones that I got. And I'm really glad I did, because doing so made me discover a huge issue I had with not only these, but all the other boxes up until now without even realizing it. You see, both the regular, tall, and the split version all have a new design for the boxes. Because I knew I was going to print about 1,000 boxes once I start this project, I wanted to see if there's anything I can improve with the existing box design. So what I ended up doing, this is one of the old boxes, was to increase the size of the area where you can place a label. So that on the new ones, it now spans the entire length, regardless of the size box. But what I started noticing once I printed these larger ones was that there was a slight bow outwards right in the area here where the label area connects. It really isn't a lot, but it's just enough that these don't fit quite as nicely anymore. You still press them in and it's not really a huge issue, but one of the things I've been super proud of over the years that I've made and sold these is that they fit together really nicely and it's a well thought out system. And this just felt like a step in the wrong direction. So I decided to see if I could figure out how to solve it, and 5 prototypes later, we finally landed on a solution. Essentially a super easy fix, just a bit of added geometry to the back here to give it more rigidity. The inspiration for this comes from the air ventilation systems that often have these creases in the large sheet metal parts to do the same exact thing, stiffen up a large surface. It doesn't add any extra print time, doesn't add any extra material, just makes the back surface here a lot stronger. And now, even the large ones slide in without a problem. That got me looking at all the other sizes, and I came to realize that this was actually an issue for the lower ones as well, and especially the larger sizes. I just hadn't noticed it. So now, even though I was already done creating and exporting all these files in the different sizes and heights and splits and all of that, I redid everything, added that same geometry to the lower boxes as well, and the split boxes and the tall ones. re-exported everything. That's hundreds of different variations of boxes. And in case you guys want to download any of them in any of the sizes or the plans, make sure to head over to alch.shop because I sure spent a lot of time making sure that all the small details like this were right. Okay, check this out. Now we're talking. I'm currently in the process of testing and making sure that all the print profiles for all the different platforms work as intended, because I want you guys to have the best experience possible when you download the files and the pre-sliced files. You just hit print and fingers crossed it should print just the way that I printed here. So I'm currently testing boxes on the X1, on the Mini. This is an absolute mess, but the A1, H2S, H2D, different test, H2D. I'm doing this of course so that I can feel good about the products that I offer for sale on my website, and so that you have a good experience when you go to print the files that you bought from me. Now, before we tally up the final build cost for one of these complete units with all the materials and all the 3D printing, I promise you that this system can do something that I've never seen anywhere else before. Because you see, normally in a system like this, in a tool cart or organizer cart or whatever, you end up loading up the whole thing with a bunch of really heavy nuts and bolts and whatnot. And what ends up happening is that eventually the weight in the front here becomes so great that the whole thing runs the risk of tipping over. Or does it? Like, I know the trick and why this works, but it still looks so wrong. So the reason why this system is able to do something that shouldn't be possible is that I've cheated a little bit. I've added a bunch of weight to the back in the form of concrete pavers. And the reason I can do that is that there's a little bit of space left over in the back of the drawers because the storage slides aren't actually full extension. And I've utilized this space to create a counterweight. In most of the units, one concrete paver was more than enough to achieve this, but in this one, I first glued in 2, which wasn't enough, and then glued in a third one, which now gives me, well, the ability to basically lean on it without running the risk of tipping. And by the way, this is the by far heaviest cart that I got. All the top 10 drawers are completely filled with nuts and bolts, and it just gets heavier and heavier. So to be fair, let's add in the price for that concrete paver as well. And we're left with a build cost for this unit as it sits with 3 pavers and completely filled to the brim with 3D printed boxes of $526. Now initially, I thought that that was pretty expensive. But then I looked into what a comparable tool cart would cost, and like a normal Husky tool cart about this size is $450. And that's completely empty, none of the 3D printed boxes. Also, the per unit cost gets a lot less expensive if you choose to build more of them, or if you don't want to fill them so completely up to the brim with boxes like I did. Most of these other units have a lot fewer boxes because many of them are larger, and that cuts down on material usage a lot. So just for fun, if we, let's say, use about 80% of the material that I use on this one on average and get the benefit of being able to utilize material a lot better if we build more of them. These are the per unit prices, building anywhere from 1 to 6 of these, where you can see you can get as low as $408 for a complete unit with all the boxes in it. Cost of purchasing the plans and 3D files not included. Now, it will be a while before I'm completely done with organizing all of these drawer units. I both want to live with the system for a while, and I'm planning on building a bunch more custom inserts and holders for tools and equipment and all sorts of things. But I'm sure you're curious, how much 3D printing and how much filament did I use to complete this entire project as it stands now? Now, a rough estimate, with not all the drawers completely full and a lot of boxes left over, I printed somewhere between 1,600 and 1,700 individual parts. That's boxes, handles, and base grids alone. None of the prototyping. That's roughly 1,100 print hours and 80 kilograms of PLA. And we're only just getting started. I've got huge plans to keep upgrading the system even more with a lot more cool projects to come. If that's something you're into, make sure to subscribe. See you guys next one.